Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for stopping by. And before we start, somebody wants to say hello. Who's that in there? Hey, who's that there? Now this somebody's not allowed out here really. Pushing his luck. Don't know why I talk to you, you're almost deaf now, aren't you? Hey, you don't hear much at all. Come on then. Right, where were we? Care collab today. Now this is an unusual care collab because I'm only going to show one orchid, and quite honestly it's about the caring for the type of orchid, so we don't really need to see dozens of them, do we? One will do. Could even do it without showing any orchids, I suppose. But this is an unusual care collab where it takes longer to put the channels in than it does make the video. Unfortunately, with that many channels, it means many of them won't get watched. People have only got so much time in the day, you know. If each video averaged 15 minutes and there's 20 channels, do the maths. Anyway, so chances are nobody's watching mine. I'm not a Vanda specialist, but in the age-old tradition, we will do the list of names. So in a grow room far, far away, right, back to normality. Where's your Vanda? I'll get it in a minute. It's a care collab. So first of all, we'll talk about Big Vandas in general. And we'll say the word again. Big Vandas. I've seen Vandas 3 meters tall plus roots. How high is your ceiling? Where are you going to keep your Vanda? These are thoughts you need to put in before you attempt to get a big Vanda going over many, many years. You will need height, not width, height. You also need to bear in mind that there's an element of the plant below where the leaves start that you'll need to cater for. That can be extensive. I'll show you mine in a minute. But as far as looking after Vandas in the UK is concerned, your main problem is the winter, specifically because it'll be cold or colder. Now if you're growing in the home, you can disregard the temperature thing because you're going to keep your Vanda probably in a place where you're comfortable, and if it's warm enough for you and you're comfortable, it'll be fine for your Vanda. But what you've got to contend with in the UK in the winter is the ridiculously short day lengths. Vandas are highlight orchids, yeah? They like to be warm and they like bright light. They also come from the tropics. So when we're talking bright light, we're talking bright light, you know, which we have a job to compete with in the UK, especially in the winter. Full sun in the winter in the UK is still not as bright as the light in the tropics. Get your camera meter out and try it. So anyway, we struggle with Vandas in the UK through lack of light. You can compensate that with artificial lighting, yeah, and some grow lights in your area. That way you get rid of the short days in the winter because you artificially maintain the day length. And you can maintain good light and day length. And your Vandas should prosper. Yeah, they should do really well under those conditions. Now under my conditions they don't do really well. They hang in there, and that's about all I can say. My large Vanda, which I'll show you in a minute, would probably be twice as big as that, apart from our UK winters. Because for 3 or 4 months of the year, it almost stops growing. And it shuts down. The root tips shut down. It just stops growing. And then it's got to get going again when the longer days come and the warmer day temperatures come. And it's not so cold at night. And then it starts to kick off. And somewhere in there it might even bloom. But it did miss a year. It bloomed, did it bloom last year or the year before? It bloomed last year, but it missed the year before. Apart from that, it's bloomed every year since I got it, which is quite a while ago now. And in addition to that, once it produced 2 spikes at the same time. I doubt if it'll do that again. Anyway, the main problem you've got is housing the things. They are monopodial, they grow upright and they grow from the top. They don't grow from the bottom. You can get side growths or basal growths. I don't call those cakeys because strictly speaking they're not. But they can shoot out. You can get young plants growing off the sides, you know, off the stem near the base normally. You also get roots that extend up the base. So when you buy your relatively young plants, say, and all your roots come out from the base, don't expect that to be maintained because they'll start coming out of leaf joints higher up, which they tend to do more readily in higher humidity. So your root system's going to become extensive. Now, what can you do? A lot of people have taken to growing Vandas in glass vases or vases, however you want to say it. Needs a wide top, obviously it's preferably clear so you can see what's going on, and it needs to be large. You know, relatively large across the top, probably a uniform shape, and pretty, you know, you're looking at a reasonable size. Now your little plant, when it first goes in there and it sort of stands up on its roots and the plant starts halfway up the vase and 2 leaves poke out the top, it might look a bit silly. Give it a year or 2 and a lot of the plant will be sticking out the top. Give it 5 years and most of the plant will be sticking out the top, and the vase or vase will be totally full of roots. The beauty of growing them like that is they can stay in there. You shouldn't need to take them out unless it's to clean the vase. You know, you probably get some algae on it because it's glass. But the idea with growing them like that is that you put your water and or feed in the vase and you leave your plant to soak and then you pour the water out. Some people recommend leaving a little bit in the bottom. Helps with the humidity around the roots, and if a few of the roots are touching, it's constantly hydrating. I like that idea. Yeah, that's good. They are drinkers, they will drink. And if you've got a bare-rooted Vanda, which that's how they grow naturally, they don't, you know, they tend to cling on to tree trunks and things, but most of the roots are aerial. It's only for attachment. And if you think about the shape of the plant, that's why it pushes roots out from leaf joints, because gradually the plant gets taller and taller and heavier, and there it goes if it wasn't attached part way up. So there is some logic in those extra roots that kick out. So the glass vase or vase idea is quite good, yeah? Ease of care, you know. But eventually it will get tall enough that it will actually tip your vase over. So, you know, there's a limited life in one of those, and the bigger it gets, the more, you know, the more fragile it's going to get to falling over. So what most people do is they attach some wire and they have a hook, so it can now hang. So it can't fall over. It can fall off, but it can't fall over. So we hang them. And if you're going to hang them, the chances are you're going to leave them bare-rooted. Now, catering for bare roots. You can spray them, and you can spray them quite frequently. I doubt if you're hydrating the plant properly. Put a hose on it and you might, but it's not going to do it. They need more than that. So what a lot of people do with their bare rooted ones is they dunk them. They actually dip them in some sort of container that's either got just the water in or water with feed, whatever they're doing for the plant on that particular run. How often? Well, how long's a piece of string? How humid is your atmosphere? Remember, Vandas are designed to take in humidity from the air. That's what those aerial roots are for. If the humidity isn't in the air, they can't take it in, can they? Therefore they'll need dunking a lot more often. Yeah? Because they're dehydrating. They're actually losing moisture, not only through the leaves, but probably through the roots as well. So it depends on your humidity. A very, very high humid atmosphere, and they won't need watering as often, you know, actual dunking, but they'll still need some. I doubt if they'll survive on humidity from the air alone. Remember, these are tropical orchids. When it rains, it rains. It's not, oh, I think I might put a coat on. You step outside, you're soaked. It's not open to debate, you're wet. And that's how the plants live. They get absolutely soaked for a period of time, hours. Absolutely soaked. And then it stops raining and the sun comes out. You know, that's sort of cycle. So, I'll go over mine in a minute, quickly. But yeah, looking after Vandas in the UK, your main problem is the winter time. In the summertime, the best light you can give them, I wouldn't recommend taking them from the depths of your lounge and putting them out in the greenhouse and hanging them in the roof with no shading. That's probably not a good idea. If you are going to expose them to very high light, including some sun, morning, evening, yeah, then I would recommend that you do it gradually. Yeah? If they're already in that position in the UK, the gradually is going to happen as you transition from winter to summer. The gradually is built in to the day lengths. Yeah? It'll just happen naturally. You can still get some burning though. You know, you get a period of a fortnight when, like now, the rate of change on a daily basis is at its dramatic. You know, it's changing at a colossal rate. You get a fortnight of miserable weather, and when the sun comes out at the end of it, it's an awful lot stronger than it was at the beginning. So the transition's been lost due to our rubbish weather on occasions. So there you go. Highlight, and it is said they're high feeders. Well, schools of thought, a little and often, or a lot and starvation in between. I like the little and often. Maybe I underfeed mine, I don't know. But anyway, let's get on, and I'll get the... No, I won't get the camera down. Yes, I will actually. Let's get the camera down. Let's all be seasick. Clang, there goes my coffee. Right, so this is my Big Vanda. I'd say the dimensions are just over a metre from the bottom of the roots to the top of the leaves. Now, over the years I've managed to get a slight curve on mine, and a lot of Vandas I've observed not only get a bit of a curve on them, but they often get an S shape. They often change, and a lot of that could be that you're changing the position of them and they're growing slightly towards the light. That is a possibility. Now this one's got a gap. It lost a couple of leaves here, so yeah, so there's a gap, but this has still got some of its original leaves down here. They're not in the best of condition, but they're probably still working. And you've got the oldest part of the plant down here with what are in effect dead roots, and then out of the dead root come some live bits. So watch what you cut off. Go careful, they will shoot out. And as you can see, the roots extend up the stem, and the latest root is this big fat one round here. There, that's the latest one that came out last year, and it continues to push roots out. I'm interested to see what happens soon, because the lowest bloom spike is here, and that's the next leaf up. So what's it going to do now then? It's already produced bloom spikes from that leaf joint. Can it produce a root as well, or is it going to miss one? So logically we should get a root over here somewhere this year, or maybe two. And your bloom spikes continue, you know, each time it blooms. Now this one doesn't bloom on every leaf joint. It blooms about every fourth or fifth leaf. So bearing that in mind, it needs to grow that number of leaves to be able to support a new spike, because the spikes are extensive on this one. And big. It's not only a big Vanda, the blooms are big, the spikes are big, everything about this thing is big. And it's got to the point now where I would say it's a little bit of a nuisance. Now in here I've got choices. Ideally I ought to get some hooks up on the roof and hang it so that it gets the best light it can get, and then I'm going to bump into it every time I walk through, because if you think about the height of it, if the leaves were nearly touching the roof, the roots are going to be here. I'm going to be walking into it. So I have to find somewhere I can put it where it's out the way, and at the moment it's just on the end of these hanging racks. That's probably where it's going to stay. Now that may or may not be enough light to get it to bloom. That's a wait and see. So that's that. Right, dunking. I've got a bucket which is purely for the Vandas or Vandaceous types, because my Renanceras go in there as well. And watering and feeding, which I shouldn't really do this, but I need to show you, is because that water's, it's not got its temperature. It's a bit chilly at the moment to chug a Vanda in. But it's basically a matter of just tucking the roots in, making sure that they all tuck inside. This is not so easy one-handed. And then this one goes in sideways like that. The reason it goes in sideways is that the roots are climbing up, and if I stand it upright in the bucket, the top roots don't get in the water. So I lean it over sideways like that to make sure the roots get a good dunk. And then after my soaking time, I turn it over the other way and let it lean the other way, and that gets the rest of the roots done. Length of time it stays in there is based on memory, which ain't so good as we get older. It has been known to get put in there late morning and still be there the next morning. Nothing untoward happens. There is a limit to a plant, yeah? It loses hydration through the leaves, a natural process, and it replaces it by drawing it in through the roots. So if you've got it in soak and you forget to take it out, what happens? Well, the plant fills up until it's got to the point where it can't get any more in. And that's it. It will only then replace what it loses through the leaves. Yeah, which will be very little, depending on the temperature and the light level, all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't do them any harm if you forget them. It's not the end of the world. As I said, mine's gone at least a day, sometimes longer. But under normal circumstances, that would get about an hour. And then I'd turn it over the other way and it would get another hour. Obviously I'm not going to sit here and watch it for an hour. I get on with other stuff, and sometimes that other stuff takes over, and halfway through that other stuff I think, oh, I must go round the shop, and I go shopping. And that's how it gets forgotten. So what's in the bucket? Well, it's RO water, and at the moment the feed level on that is it's a TDS of 320, and that's my MSU feed, and it's got nothing else in it. So that's all that's in there at the moment. And I adjusted the pH when I created the new feed in the new water to 6.5. Yeah. Now there is a problem with when you've got a constant pH like that, because although a pH of 6.5 is okay, every now and again it could do with a lower pH. There are certain elements in your balanced nutrients that you use that are only absorbed well at lower pH values, like 6 or a bit below, 5.8, 5.9. Well, if you've got a feed bucket like this that's at a constant pH, which it will be, unless anything affects it, then you're not allowing for that lower one. So I change the water about every 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. And when I change the water, every other time that I change the water, I put my feed in, and that will naturally, at that level, produce a pH of about 5.9. Yeah? And I'll give the plant a couple of dunks at that pH before I adjust it back up. Yeah? For the rest of the time I'm going to use that water. Now obviously I'm on a water meter now at this place, so I'm a little more careful with water than I used to be, and the chances are that water won't get thrown down the sink when I replace it. It will get used somewhere, you know, at least some of the tubs in the garden or something, or the bonsai. I'm not just going to dump it. So anyway, that's how I look after mine. Brightest light I can give them, and the blooming takes place. I don't seem to have any control over that. I've had bloom spikes come out in the spring. I've had bloom spikes come out in the autumn. The autumn bloom spikes are brilliant because they're going into the cooler temperatures. Well, we may not get the heat in here this year. They last a lot longer. So a bloom spike produced in the autumn will probably last well into the winter and on in towards spring. So they can last a very long time. So there we go, that's my take on Big Vandas. But the main thing I will say that is, if you're going to get a Big Vanda and you go to the seller and you say, how big is this going to get? The chances are they're going to tell you, oh, they don't get too big. Because if they say it gets 2 meters tall, you're probably not going to buy it, are you? So they will possibly mislead you. It's not intentional, really deliberate type stuff, because the chances are they don't flipping know. Because if you've got a hybrid Vanda in as a young plant, unless you've seen a 10-year-old version of that plant, you probably don't know how big it's going to get. Because the number of things that can have gone into that particular Vanda is infinite. And some are big, some are medium, and some are small. There are dwarf Vandas around. You can search them out. Yeah, and they will stay a lot smaller. Yeah, smaller leaves, smaller root systems, just don't grow as tall. Yeah, there are some Vandas around in the species that actually prefer slightly cooler temperatures. Yeah, so all these things are out there. They're not all warm to hot growing. Some of them do like lower temperatures. There aren't many that like lower light levels. They all seem to like bright light. Anyway, so there we go. And I'll end on a look at the blooms again, because on this particular one they are pretty spectacular.